Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and whether you're watching live or archived, and welcome to another in Nautel's Transmission Talk Tuesday webinar series, episode number 51. Yes, I checked the screen just to be sure, even though 50 was last week. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're not having fun. I'm Jeff Wilton, and we're going to have some fun today. We're talking about power supplies, speaking of time and timing and all that great stuff. Got two people, as always, try to find somebody smarter than me to talk about that stuff. And so the title says everything you wanted to know about power supplies, and we're going to kind of do a two-parter. It's everything you wanted to know about power supplies and dealing with customer service, because the two do tie together more and more, and we'll explain why in a little while. So to that point, I've got our good friend and the head of our support and IT department, Mr. John Wilton. John, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for inviting me.
So John likes to refer to me as his unpaid help because I'll occasionally take a support call, and I think I probably cause more trouble than I provide help. But there you go. So that's another I guess tie-in, if you will. Also with us today, we've got our product engineering manager, production engineering manager, sorry, Scott, Mr. Scott Marchand. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Hey, Jeff. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Try to go easy on me.
I'll be gentle as I can within reason. So now the one thing I want to clarify is, so you're production engineering manager, your primary task, if I'm not mistaken, is supporting production and support with existing product. Does that sum it up?
That's correct. Yeah. So support and sustain represent a pretty significant branch of my department. Probably the majority of the work that we do is around sustainability. This actually falls into that category. Lots of other fun things around production engineering, manufacturing engineering, test engineering, so on. But yeah, support and sustain definitely takes most of our time.
Very cool. And that's one of those things because, John, obviously the support part is near and dear to your heart. So you guys tend to work pretty closely together in a lot of cases.
Yeah, very closely. I'm lucky enough with my team. I have a group of technicians, and for some more of the I guess, more complicated matters, or if we see a trend, we reach out to Scott's team, and we're working on a solution for either a transmitter or many transmitters. So
Right.
we're really tied at the hip.
That would explain some things. But anyway, anybody who's been to more than one of these knows that we don't hold on formality too much. One of the things, and this isn't really part of the project or part of the discussion, but it kind of sort of is, and I know it's Scott's sort of, I guess, baby, for lack of a better phrase, but we keep all this stuff in a database system that makes it easier to track. And we use one called Jira. And Scott, that's something you've kind of spearheaded. I know I've cursed it many times, but I do recognize the value of it. And there's a lot of useful information in there.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I couldn't imagine a day that goes by in the support and sustain world without some form of database to manage all of the calls. I know John has their, they have their own application, but they're tied quite nicely together. There's so much information. We've been doing this for well over 50 years. This database has really helped over the last 12 or so years to start to retain a lot of this information and manage the work and manage the issues and enable a lot of my staff, John's staff, to pull information at literally the click of a button and then help provide some visibility, much needed visibility to other key stakeholders in our company. So yeah. I have put a lot of time and effort into it, but it pays off.
If I can just add to that, he mentioned a database, and it's really becoming a knowledge base as well, because a lot of the historical information's in there. So if we see an issue that we can't figure out off the top of our heads, we can go into this database and look at past cases, the solution, who worked on it. It's a great, great solution helper, I guess, is the way.
It's far more difficult to find information in the 20 or 30, well, almost 25 years of logbooks, paper logbooks, finding what you need. So leveraging these systems is pretty critical in our world. So.
Well, and that's pretty huge. It's like I say, I will cuss it on occasion, but when I think back to the days when it was me, Kevin, Steve, and Norm taking the calls, and if you saw something you hadn't seen before, you got on the phone and it's like, hey, Steve, I've got this guy with an AMFET 5. And have you ever heard of that before? And I mean, now
Right.
a couple of keywords into Jira, and you can usually come up with some good ideas.
Some ideas, and that's key, right? You may not have the exact solution, but you'll have a few things to try for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So very cool. Well, before we get rolling too far further ahead, and as always, I will sit here, we'll run the first 10 minutes before we even get started. Um, Mandatory housekeeping stuff. If you've never done one of these before, we do encourage them to be as interactive as possible. I see that Jerry's made us letting the smoke out comment and Mark's saying good morning. So some folks have found the question section already. By all means, questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, sarcasm, snark, any and all of the above. I will reserve the right to edit content when I'm repeating it on the mic. If you're not shy and you have a mic of your own, don't feel afraid to hit the little hand wavy icon. If we see that up, we may unmute you and make you part of the conversation. So by all means, folks, let's have some fun with this. Also, if you are an SBE member, and I see Wayne Pacina in the audience, Wayne's been with us almost every session. So Wayne, hey, thanks for being here. But Nautel webinars do qualify under SBE recertification category I for recertification credits. Half credit if you're a SBE certified member. If you're not, why not? All right, so there, mandatory housekeeping done. So what are we going to talk about? Well, one of the things we're going to talk about, and Scott's coming into this unscripted. Well, everybody's coming into this unscripted except me because I created this thing this morning, which makes it a whole lot more fun. But how did we get here is one of the things with switching supplies versus big iron. And so Scott, you probably haven't seen this, but I got digging through the databases this morning and found just this little old spreadsheet that we did a million years ago comparing the virtues of the two. And so what was, just give me the rough bird's eye view of the decision-making process.
Well, I mean, we're going back a ways, probably not before my time by any means, but definitely before my the level of authority I guess I have now. But you know, some of our chief engineer, actually John Collier, who's no longer with the company, but has definitely made his mark. You know, looked at opportunities for new product development. We started in FM or FM product line. It would have been in the Q series. Many of our customers, our listeners, likely know about the Q series, and we introduced our own switch mode power supply, own internally developed switch mode power supply, and then had great success from a reliability point of view. We wanted that modularity. We wanted to try to avoid single point failure. It's hard to beat reliability of big iron, but from a cost-effective modular approach, more serviceable approach for our customers, we felt this was the best way to go.
Right.
Through the development of various FM products, we eventually partnered with an external company, and we leveraged some of the existing platforms that were in place for the telecom industry and the data centers, and did some level of customization and produced the various versions of the power supplies that we use today almost exclusively in our FM product lines.
Right. And that's something to note. And Dave mentions this in the comments that the significant portion, and he's got about 70%, but definitely a significant portion of the equipment problems he troubleshoots are power supply issues.
Yeah.
And that's accurate enough as it goes. The caveat, the key thing to remember is that a failure in a transmitter full of switching supplies isn't going to take you off air. Whereas if you have one of these things go sideways, that's a big issue. And anybody who's ever lost a plate transformer or a modulation transformer in an old AM rig, or even some of the higher power, the plate transformers in the FM gear, one of those things goes, it's it's an interesting day. Now, I grabbed the spec sheet. This is the transformer out of our XR12 10 kilowatt AM transmitter, the predecessor to the current NX series. And one of the notes that I grabbed was the efficiency plate. And Scott, that's something else that tends to make sort of the help make the decision, isn't it? Cost of operation.
Yeah, the operating costs, there's this, especially in today's day and age, we've got platinum series and titanium series power supplies, which is just a way to qualify the switch mode power supplies um, efficiency parameters, if you will. So there's kind of categorizations, ways to qualify them. And our power supplies are platinum and yeah, their efficiencies are on the order of 96% in certain operating conditions. So pretty significant overall contribution to the overall system efficiency and reduction in operating costs.
And that's significant because so you're looking at 95% efficiency here for the transformer, but then you've got rectifier or SCR losses,
Yeah,
filtering loss. So overall, you're going to lose between 10 and 15% of the power you consume before it even gets to the amplifier stage.
That's right.
So, and that's significant because especially for the folks that are used to working with FM transmitters of the tube variety out there, y'all are used to working, you'll see the plate efficiency and it's some number like 75 to 80% and everything looks great. But when you factor in the power supply losses, your overall is down in the 50s and 60s. So at that point, it makes a difference and it's good to be aware of. John, I want to segue this over to you for a little bit because that was something else that kind of came to mind was that when you look at these, you're talking 240, 480, 380 in some places, 600 volt, single phase, three phase. Some transmitters may have SCR supplies, some may have diode rectifiers, depending on power levels. I mean, you're talking a plethora, a virtual plethora of different parts to remember versus UG69 or UG132, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So it's much easier from a cost perspective for our customers if there's only a single choice of what to use on their transmitter family. So and as we're going to get into later on, we're really going to piggyback off the UG132 now and in the future. So that should be beneficial to our customers overall.
Yeah. Now, Sean Ferguson makes a comment that transformer looks exactly like one he replaced from a Rockwell Collins 10 kilowatt HF transmitter in the military. And these Hammond transformers are pretty consistent looking across the board. I mean, we've used them in a bunch of different things over the years. And as Scott mentioned earlier, they're rugged. There's no question about it. But, and this is the argument I make. There are some differences. And Scott, I might ping you a little for this. If I was getting rid of a transmitter that had a big iron supply where I've got an automatic isolation transformer between my transmitter supplies and the outside world, probably in my best interest to make sure that I've taken the step to beef up the grounding and surge protection.
Well, you've put a lot of time and effort into talking to our customers about, good site layout and so on. I'm sure part of your motivation to say that, but absolutely, like any installation, good surge protection, good grounding of the site is vital, no matter the installation. You have to also think about the environments, not only the AC conditioning, but just the other harsh environments of the site. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that does come back to another thing, and that would be airflow. And this is something that Sean Mattingly had asked in the advanced questions, and I haven't checked down on the list to see if Sean's with us today or if his Noah's been getting a lot of press recently. Noah's Sean's intern, and I don't see Sean on here. But either way, we'll put it in there for the archive. Sean had asked why we don't stock replacement fans, and he was specifying the GV supplies, the UG92 or 132 is what we're using now.
Yeah.
And that is a point that's worth noting that in a lot of cases, especially in the early days, we don't get a lot of the information related to the supplies, do we? Like parts lists or mechanicals,
correct,
electrical.
Correct, yeah. Yeah,
now,
we consider these, I mean, they are customized in the nature of firmware in most cases, but they are, for all intents and purposes, off the shelf, non-repairable items historically for us. So we don't go down to the bill of materials. We don't recommend customers replace them. or repair them, open them up. There's obviously hazardous, you got to take care when you're accessing these things beyond warranty. I can appreciate most people are trying to deal with these things beyond the warranty, but we obviously care about their safety. So if not done properly, there could be some injuries to
Now
consumers.
that said, looking at the UG69, the one we used in the NV series and using the VS series even now, those ones, there is a field mod for replacing the fan for that.
There's a field mod for reversing the fan for that, which could be adapted, I'm sure. That reversal is to address a specific requirement for V series. So so yes, we have access, but under a controlled documentation, controlled by Nautel on the instructions, we inform customers how to simply reverse the fan.
So this is the part where I throw John under the bus and say, so if you really want something like that, send the request to John or reach out to him at support at nautel.com. That's the best way to find any of the support, folks.
Exactly.
And if he gets enough interest in it, I'm sure he could task somebody with creating such a thing within the limits, again, of safety and security. Let's see, Mark mentions they just had a situation where they used a vacuum as a blower to cool down a supply with a fan failure. And yeah, that's, again, creative, desperate times call for desperate measures. Now, Javad is asking if there's fan failure detection in these power supplies. And there is, those fans are tachometer based, aren't they, Scott?
Yeah, there's in particular, are we talking UG69 or the UG132 as 92 as you're showing on the screen?
Let's just, I mean, they've all got some sort of fan speed indicator on the user interface.
The UG92 absolutely has the fan speed. The 69, there's 3 sensors based on the 3 specific critical locations within the power supply, like thermal sensors. So the 69 has a slightly different implementation of thermal protection than the UG132 or UG92 from our other partners.
Very cool. So that will, and Tony Dimsdale makes the comment, just keep them clean and keep them cool. And absolutely, that's critical for any electronics at all.
They're also, it's worth noting that we didn't just grab them off the shelf from the telecom industry. So if you look at the telecom industry, the typical environmental class is quite pristine overall, relatively speaking, compared to transmitter sites. So all of our power supplies have been conformal coded. It's actually part of the customization that we do to increase the reliability and deal with some of these harsh environments. Yes, it's always advisable that you make sure your filters are clean. You're dealing with more light line regulation and some of the earlier point that Jeff made. But yeah, we go above and beyond to make sure we increase the reliability figures of these power supplies by adding conformal code to critical.
And it's worth adding that that was part of our learning curve too, because the original UG69s were not coded.
Correct. So it was only a few versions in that we actually added that. And then we've since learned that for all future switch mode power supplies as it's a requirement.
Right. Now Ben mentions you're worried about us getting hurt repairing these supplies, yet we used to reach our arms inside Continental power cabinets to tune the transmitter. And that's not wrong as far as it goes. And John, I'll get you to address this a little bit, but the thing that comes to my mind is more and more as we see the younger people coming in with IT background and very little high voltage RF type background, that's not always the case anymore.
Yeah, that's a great point. Our customers are shifting to a different, I guess, background, as you mentioned, more IT focus. And I think a lot of times it's just that they can do different things within an organization. So they can run the IT plus the broadcast side. And we've been spending a lot of time doing some small training sessions for these folks and how to be safe around a transmitter, but also how to do just normal maintenance. And a lot of times it's the first time they ever took a cabinet off or a cover, and it's great to be part of that experience with them because we're very excited about teaching the new professionals in this long industry.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to, one of the things, and Marco's mentioned here that the UG69 are NLA, and we've got a field mod for adapting UG132, and I'm going to grab Scott into that in a moment. But just as an example, going through when we first started putting the Tectral supplies into the V series a whole bunch of years ago, we did I mean, lots of studies. They were looking at turn-off time, looking at inrush currents, looking at short circuit operation. I mean, it's not simply, and Scott, you could address that, but it's not simply a matter of just looking at a spec sheet and say, oh, there's a 48 supply, that'll do.
Yeah, not for this type of application, because these particular power supplies, and they're used in various applications. Envy, for example, they're used for IPA, they're used for fan, as a fan supply. But considering their association to the RF output stage and how critical their performance specifications are around noise and spurious emissions, and then not to mention these harsh environments and their immunity and susceptibility figures. Yeah, it's not by any means just grabbing an off-the-shelf power supply. It has to meet some pretty stringent requirements. Current protection based on certain failure conditions of the amplifier, operating into very harsh conditions, loads. So, yeah. By no means is it you can't find it in your calculator. It's something that you have to understand some of the.
And I mean, the funny thing is, we were talking about your and I say your JIRA database, but the JIRA database. I mean, like I said, it's become your baby because you kind of shepherded it in, and sometimes I'll grant it against us kicking and screaming. Apologies for that, because I have started to see the value of it significantly to the point where I was actually in it this morning. And one of the things I was looking at specifically, and this comes back to what Marco was talking about with the replacement for the UG160, or the one, I used to speak English, the UG69 with the UG132, is that there is an adapter jig, and there are literally dozens of cases in JIRA discussing the development of that.
That's right. Yeah. Development, verification, the firmware aspects, everything, all the work we do as it relates to even the planning side of it, understanding the scope of the work and the project planning and management side of it is all in JIRA, is all managed by JIRA.
Yeah. And that's critical to
anybody.
Right. And that's critical to remember, because one of the things that is important it kind of opens my eyes a little, because I'll go in and search for something like this, because of course we just hear about this at the front end when somebody posts on Facebook, oh, support told me you can't get this supply anymore. And so then to me, this is an immediate, this has just happened, we haven't done anything, why haven't we done it? And then I'll go in and look at JIRA and see that in this case, for example, we've been looking at this for well over a year and a half. So it's definitely, again, it's not a new thing. Now, William Harrison has mentioned he'd love info on adapting an NV to use the new supplies, and absolutely, William, I can get that to you with John, or have one of the support guys reach out after the fact and get that information to you, because it is something that, definitely is a big deal. And it's pretty basic. It's this is a different version. This is the one for the V series, but the same concept, right? It's just an adapter jig with a new supply.
Yeah, you're looking at the UG69 base replacement for the UG39, so the old 1465 version series from an RV series. That's what this picture represents, at least.
Right. And I mean, the concept is somewhat similar. Now, Scott, this is something that I don't know, and folks, some of this is new development, so I don't want to put Scott on a limb, but like we've talked a lot about replacing the UG69 with UG132s with a jig and just plug it in. And in an an NV series transmitter, you've got a fair bit of headroom, and it's pretty much plug and play. But what about like a VS transmitter where you've a little more space intensive?
Yeah, so the VS has been reviewed, and within the last year, there's been a number of initiatives and strategic objectives around dealing with this availability issue for these power supplies. And I'm happy to say that to John's earlier point about moving towards one single supply, UG132 in this case, it's really just the replacement, the successor to the UG92, which is from NV Light and GV. We've had a huge amount of success with that. Very pleased with the failure rates. We've now made the choice to implement that into VS, and so we're working on. I was in the lab just before this webinar, putting some time into the development of that replacement, that update to the VS transmitters, that it'll actually incorporate not an adapter, but literally a change in the internal infrastructure to use a new distribution board and the new power supply. So a little cleaner. There's no framework for a power supply anymore. It's just nicely integrated into the transmitter itself.
Very cool. And speaking of that, I know you had mentioned that you had a bunch of stuff on the go. So we're probably going to segue into the customer service aspect of it. Now, one thing for the folks listening, and Marco, Marco's here, he's doing my job probably better than I can most days, but he mentions that it's FM 20003 for the NV series update, the UG132 into the UG69. So
thank you, Marco.
Yeah, anybody who's taking notes at home, FM 20003, just support at nautel.com when you need something like that. That's what you'd be looking for. Not to say that if you call them and say, hey, I need a power supply for this transmitter, and they look it up and see it's an NV, they're going to take care of that for you anyway. But hey, it's always nice, what do they say? The more you know. John Van Milligan mentions he likes the wider AC input range on the newer supplies. He had a situation with their GV30 where the power company dropped a phase and it just kept running in low power mode, whereas you lose a phase on an old transmitter and you're either off or cooked. And that's significant to note because on an older transmitter, if you lose a phase, most of them have a Y primary delta secondary. I may have that backwards, but Y and delta primary to secondary. And if you lose a phase on the input, the delta will try to auto transform the missing phase, and depending on the current draw on the remaining two legs of the input side, you can cause the breaker to trip, at which point you're off the air till somebody gets out there to flick a breaker.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to know. Well, Scott, we've kept you to the halfway mark of this, and I know you do want to get back down to lab, so I really appreciate your time, and thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the questions if there are any, and I'll help address later.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Wilton, you are now the man on the hot seat, and you have no backup. It's all yours, buddy. So support calls, and you came to us, and I'll be honest, I've said this in a disparaging way before, but having dealt with myself as a cable company customer, coming from a cable ISP is probably not a bad way to get used to learning how to manage a lot of information and a lot of data, if you will. So you've set things up pretty much so there are some procedures, and things seem to flow pretty well. What would you like to tell me about that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I came from the cable TV world, which it's an industry that has spent a lot of money in the infrastructure and the tools to ensure that all of you are supported as well. So one of the great things was when I joined this company, people like Jeff and also our owner Kevin actually worked in the customer service. So it wasn't hard to convince them to invest a little bit more into what we're doing, just to make sure that you guys are supported 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and measuring that ourselves to ensuring that we're turning things around in a timely manner, and we'll get into that later on. So the big thing is, like, when I first started, I remember going to the first sales meeting is like, why do you guys always ask our customers for the serial number? Why can't you just answer the question? And the reason for that is no different when I bring my car in for service, they ask me for my serial number. From there, we can see the make, we can see kind of the past history. And that's the important thing is, as we have 52 years worth of products, we want to make sure that when we're speaking to you, we're speaking about the right transmitter, because even though it may have the same nameplate, there's different variations of those transmitters. And more importantly, we keep that history. So if you retire and someone else comes along, we can give the history of that transmitter to the next technician, engineer, station owner, or if you go to sell it, we have a lot of history on that.
Yeah, the other thing to remember with that too is that we do have a lot of situations where we'll have people with multiple iterations of the same transmitter under the same
Exactly.
call sign. I mean, we'll have
Yeah,
situations where you got main, backup, and aux, and you might have 3 transmitters purchased years apart from each other, so it is critical.
that's right. And then, of course, contact number and email. So we use Salesforce as a company for CRM. So your information is there, and we can see past history of when the last time you reached out to us, and we'll see if it's a common occurrence. And then that's when Scott and I get together. Not to get off track, but we mine that data every month, and there's 4 of us that meet, and we look for commonalities of maybe failures over each product line. Takes several hours to run these reports, takes another couple hours to go over them, and we're ensuring that your transmitters will run flawlessly.
And again, that's something that's really crucial to bring up to the folks that are watching at home or at the office or on the road or wherever you may happen to be. But by all means, if you run into a situation with something, even if you're pretty sure you've got it resolved, drop an email to say, hey, I saw this. And that way somebody can throw a service ticket into your station and under the asset, under your transmitter, and it'll show up on John's reports, because nothing's more frustrating than somebody calling and saying, this keeps happening, and we go look in the system and we've got no records of it ever having happened.
That's right. So we use analytics a lot, and again, it's just to make sure that you guys are well taken care of today and in the future. As it says here, description of the issue. So please tell us what's going on. If you have video or any reports that you can share with us, that's great. We can tap in. We have tools like TeamViewer. I know a lot of you have used that with us, where we can go in and see what's happening. And also we have TeamViewer Pilot, where we can send you a link and which will attach to your mobile device, and we can see what you're seeing and highlight, like actually circle things what you'll see on your mobile device to either not touch, or can you examine this a little bit further. So again, this is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right. And so let's see, a couple of questions came in while we were talking. So Jeff Wilson, who covers, he's my counterpart in the Western US, has asked a question from a customer. Is Nautel looking for service engineers? And if so, what does it take to be one?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there, hopefully in the near future, I'll actually have a posting. We were lucky enough to have one of our technicians move off actually to Scott's team. Scott poached one of our engineers. He's working part-time for us, and we will have a need. So what I'm looking for usually is someone who has industry experience. It can be anywhere from 5 to 35 years. Can they work remotely? Because of timelines, I guess, or the different time zones. We have folks as far as Minnesota to here in Nova Scotia, down to Maine, so we're covering all areas. And a team player, so someone who's not afraid to put up their hand and say, I need help, or I'm going to offer help. So we rely on each other. There's 8 technicians or 7 technicians with very solid backgrounds, average about close to 20 years of experience, and they work really well together.
Yeah. Let's see, Javad asked, GV5 losing one phase, will it still work with reduced output? So the short answer to that, Javad, on the GV series or the NVLTs, as far as that goes, well, I'll qualify the NVLTs in a second, but the GVs, if you're configured for 3-phase, the GV has 2 low volt supplies by default. One's across A and B, and one's across B and C. So if you lose either line A or line C, then the other supply can pick up and keep going. If you lose line B, the one that's common to both, then you're going down because you lost the low volt supply. So basically, you've got a 66.66666 some number to sixes percent chance that you will stay on the air at reduced power for any three-phase configured GV. Now, why I qualified the NVLT, because they have the same power supply configuration, but the dual low volt supply is an option in the NVLT. So if you pick up a second dual low voltage supply, whether you order it with the transmitter or order it after the fact, it's the same supply as the PA supply, so you're just ordering a UG132. Then you plug it into the low volt supply slot, and now you've got dual low volt supplies if you tell the software you do. And at that point, you've got the same redundancy there. So yeah, you've got, again, a 67% chance that you'll still be on the air at low power if you lose a phase. And the cool thing is, like I said, unlike a transformer-based transmitter, you're not trying to auto transform the missing phase and risk tripping the breaker on the wall, because the two legs that are left are going to be drawing the same, or the transmitter will drop the power to half and you draw even a little less current from those legs. So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Tony asked if the power supply adapter jigs cover the 48 to 52, depending on if you're FM only or FM plus HD for better efficiency. Short answer is yes. The new supplies are, they'll handle the same voltage and current range. Actually, I think the UG132's got a higher power rating than the UG69 does. So in that case, it should do it even a little better again. All right, on that note, John, back to you. One of the things, and maybe I'll take this one anyway. One of the things that a lot of folks will do, we use the phrase, and everybody's heard the acronym. I'm going to stick with the acronym, but RTFM. More and more we'll get calls and somebody will go, my transmitter's off. Well, what lights are lit? I don't know. Well, what do the logs say? I don't know. You're not helping me much here. You know, there is a certain sequence, and if you know what alarms are lit, all of the manuals we currently produce do have in the troubleshooting manual a list of all the alarms to give you at least a rough idea where to look. But you know, yeah, absolutely call support, because they're going to know it. But definitely you want to look into that sort of thing. One other thing that I should mention, I was talking about the low volt supplies and how you can stay on the air. One of the things that and if I'm quoting your transmitter, you'll see it on the quote. The other guys may or may not, I don't know. And if you go to a reseller, that's up to them. But we have a UPS interface. And what the UPS interface does is allow you to connect to your own UPS, preferably a good double conversion computer grade UPS, 500 volt amps or bigger, and it will keep the controller active during a short power glitch. Like, you know how the lights flicker during a lightning storm type deal, so you get a little glitch like that. And if that happens, then the transmitter can be back up and making power less than a second after the lights come back on. I've seen it as quarter second to half a second in that range. Without it, you've got to go through the restart cycle for the controller, so you're about 6 seconds off if you don't have that. So that's just, again, if I'm quoting a transmitter, you'll see it on the quote by default. You can always pull it out if you want to, but I'm going to put it in from the get-go. Reaching out, John, the website is probably the best place to find you guys.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, there's different ways, there are different channels to reach out to us. So primary that most people reach out to us is by telephone. So 1-800 number, again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're within North America, there's also another phone number for international calls on the support site. You can fill out a form, just fill out the information on the website where it says the support request, and that will get thrown into our inbox with so support@nautel.com, where Lisa monitors that, Lisa and others, but mainly Lisa. And then also we have the live chat option as well. So you can click on there, and one of the technicians, there's usually 2 or 3 people monitoring that, and they're available immediately. During the evenings, it's a little bit tougher. The phone would be the best. And one of the enhancements I've spoken to before, but I'll just remind everyone, one of the enhancements that we did about 3 years ago is when you call into us, there's some there's someone there, a technician. There's a technician there or an administration person. There's no one there kind of taking a note and then passing the slip of paper to someone. Someone is there immediately. There's even an option if you're off air, so you are no signals going out. You press that option, you jump the queue, and you'll go to one of the technicians immediately. So it's one of the enhancements we did that I borrowed from the TV world, and they call it an IVR. So where again in the past, an administration person would take a note from you, and meanwhile, like your transmitter site's burning down, and she's writing on the piece of paper and hand it over to Jeff. Well, now you can press the button, and you'll get Terry, Ryan, Scott immediately. So, because again, we want to make sure that we understand the pressure, the pressure, just to make sure that things are transmitting as they should, and we want to be there for you. So.
Very cool. And that comes back to one of the other things here. We've got the RMA request. We do have an RMA system for stuff coming in for repair. And I know I've touched on this in past webinars. I thought it's been a little while since we did a support webinar. I'm sorry for not showing you more love.
Yeah.
But so on the RMA system, you do sort of triage those as well a little bit, don't you? Like if somebody lets you know that when they take out the RMA that, hey, we're off the air, we're reduced power, it's going to get a little more priority than if somebody's just, oh, this is one of my spare parts that I'd like to get looked at.
Yeah, exactly. Because even if it's 20 years old and or 5 days old, and if it's your only system, and we want to prioritize that. So the buckets that are triaged is off air. So that's basically top tier. So Holly and production schedules that right away, and we do our best to make sure that happens. And then current product is the next one as well. So anything that's current should be within 14 days. Then there's another bucket of 30, and then legacy up to 90. And again, some people are they're like 90, but what we have to sometimes remember is that we've been in the business for 52 years, and some of this stuff may be 30 years old, and to find the spares or the necessary parts to put back together may take some time, especially in today's environment with the supply chain issues that are happening right now. And unfortunately, Nautel doesn't miss that. We're part of that, and we do our best to make sure that we can get things repaired in a timely fashion. You'll get an email from Lisa stating that we here's your RMA. You should receive an email from her as well when it's ready to go. And we're trying to work better on communication, because there's a time we receive it, you get notification, and the time we ship it off, you get notification. We're working on our system now to have some in-between messaging as well, because again, we realize that no communication is not good communication. So it's something that we're working on as we speak right now.
Sort of so you could get a little note that says, hey, just wanted to let you know Jamie has got your module on the bench and is troubleshooting it right now, or something.
Yeah, that's right. And we do have the ability to do that now, Jeff. The only problem is we just don't want to send out too many messages, because there are different people that touch it, and we don't want every touch point to be that. So I'm going to work with some of you customers on what's important to you and what type of messaging should you receive. And so in a lot of ways, it's what's beneficial to you. So.
Yeah, and so Scott, of course, has left the conference, but is very tearfully feeding me information in the chat in the background.
Oh, yes.
And he is saying on the RMA, because of course it's partly his team that handles a lot of the
team. That's right.
Yeah. And so as much in for detail about observed behavior and conditions under which this was observed. So what went wrong and what was happening when it went wrong, because a lot of times we'll get stuff back. And I mean, this goes back to when I was taking all the calls.
Yes.
You'd get a module in and it would say dead or doesn't work. And, you know, for a simple, like an NAA11, the power amplifier out of an old AmFET AM transmitter, doesn't work is probably good enough, because it's only got two states of operation, working and not working. But when you get into controllers, exciters, VS transmitters, stuff like that, the more detail you can provide, like if you want to tell me that the the backlight goes blank after half an hour of operation, that's useful information. So definitely the more detail you can provide, even if you just scrawl it in crayon on a note and tape it to the module before you put it in the box. And that comes back to something else. What?
I was going to join, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say the
Yeah.
ideal thing would be to call in or email in that you're even sending it in to us.
Yes.
As Jeff said, we occasionally will just receive a box and have a few notes written on it, and that's it. But if we can, it'll save you a lot of time so that we can get it back to you quicker if we know up front what to expect.
Right. And going back again to my time in support, which was a whole lot of years ago now, wow, time flies when you're having fun. Like I said to start off, time flies when you're not having fun too, so you might as well have fun. But we got one back. We got a battery charger back for a navigational beacon. We know where it came from. It came from an FAA depot, which means it could have come from any one of about 20 different airports. And all we got was a battery charger in a box. There was no name, there was no description, there was nothing. And so we called that depot and they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. So, it sat on the shelf for.
It's probably still on the shelf.
Oh, it probably is, because it was, it had sat on the shelf for well over 2 years when I last looked at it. And that was 20 years ago now. But yeah, the more information. And when I say throw it in a box, don't just throw it in a box. Try to use a little bit of packing material, please. So, and I mean, this must be one of your biggest frustrations.
Yeah,
we
it isn't so much frustration for me, it's a frustration for our customer, because it goes from maybe a several $100 repair to thousands of dollars, or written off because the customer didn't take the time to pack it correctly. It's it's very key, and that's a great. I probably see about one of these a month to give you an idea of frequency, and we do probably 20 to 30 repairs a month, so it's a pretty high percentage.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess, looking at the power supplies in this, that's a VS 2.5 transmitter, so that's a 65, 70-pound transmitter. It's something that needs to be packed pretty well. And that's one of those situations where sometimes going to a packet store, like a pack and ship, UPS pack and ship is the one that comes to mind, rather than doing it yourself. It can make a difference sometimes, not always. Sometimes you're going to get stung there. So we've got 5 or 10 minutes left, and I'd hate to finish on time. Oh, there's a question Mark has asked, and I've had this come up before. Is there a possible way that we could send the correct package? And they've had a transmitter 4 or 5 years, the box is long gone. Can they call up and order a box?
Yeah, that's a great thing to do. So you can call in, and one of the administrators could put a box in a box and send it back to you. Yeah. There is a cost associated with it, but again, the cost of a box through us or UPS is a lot more economical than writing off a transmitter because of the damage.
And it's important to note too that anything we shipped out, or anything we do ship out, the packaging for it will be designed specifically for that piece.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Mark. Thanks for bringing that up. But certainly, if you need packaging, reach out again, support@nautel.com, and say, hey, I need a package for a, and this is where you got to be specific. I need a package for some parts I'm returning isn't going to help. I need a package for a power module out of an NV5LT that I need to return for repair. That gives us what we need.
I was quite surprised. Mike Woods, who's our head of engineering, is one of my peers, and I was amazed one time hearing him talking about packaging. During meetings, he would give us an update on packaging, and I'm like, why is the head of engineering? And I really didn't put it together that they spend a lot of time on making sure that, because we ship around the world, that they're going to, when the customer opens up the crate or opens up the box, it's exactly what they expect. And the key of that is the packaging material. Yeah, so it was interesting to hear the head engineer talking about boxes.
Yeah, and that's one of those. I mean, Alan, who does our carpentry work and builds the boxes, the crates around the big transmitters, he's been designing the packing for our gear since long before I started at Nautel.
That's
So,
right.
well over 30 years. John Van Milligan mentions that he thinks they still have the old wooden crate that their first VS 2.5 came in back in the day before we went to the double wall reinforced cardboard and the foam inserts. So, those packing crates, if you follow our social media, we had a thing on social media. I think Fiona had it up about a month or so ago, showing some of the different ways that the packing crates have been repurposed. Tail out of school, I was at a site where a pair of ND50s were getting installed once. And the ND50 was nominally 14 feet wide and 6 feet tall, about 3-4 feet deep, shipped in two pieces. So two crates almost 10 feet wide each. And the tower crew that was there to do antenna work had taken the packing crates for these two ND50s, built themselves, basically bolt them together and built it themselves a little shelter out in the antenna site, out in the field. And they lived in that for the 2 weeks they were on site. And I suspect their per diem went somewhere else. But but yeah, they were literally living in the transmitter packing crates for a couple of weeks. William mentions he had a buddy turn some transmitter crates into a deer blind. So there you go. I know we've got a few hunters in the audience. It'll always be fun like that. So what else comes to mind when dealing with support? I mean, you've been pretty approachable. I know if I come to you with a gripe or whining about something, you're usually pretty
Yeah.
quick to respond and help out. So is there, if a customer needs to escalate, for example, or they feel they need to escalate, which is the
Sure.
same thing, what's the best process for that?
Best process is to simply ask the person who they're speaking to, either by voice or email, to ask to speak to John Wilton. So ask to speak to their manager, their supervisor, and I will
I should have.
respond within the same day, same hour, and I'll listen to you. And also on the other side, if you have some great feedback about our team, which I get a lot of, please share that as well.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and take the time. So yeah, every time we finish a case, there's a survey that's sent out, and that survey asks 3 important questions. One is, the case is closed on our side. Is it closed on your side? So there may be things where a technician or administration person thinks, okay, thankfully I just helped Jeff with his issue, but Jeff may still think it's open. So please acknowledge if it's open or closed. The other part is, do we make it easy for you to solve your issue? So one of the things I want to do is just make us easy to do business with. So again, we want to support, we're here to support you, and that's our #1 mission. So let us know if we're doing that. And then also the last question, would you recommend us to your peers, colleagues? And that's something that we take very seriously, and and I monitor. So I part of the senior management team. I do a presentation, do up a slide deck, provide that to the group, and then also with my team, we come up with action plans. So every morning, I meet with my team first thing in the morning, and we review the day before and what could we do better, or what we've been doing well the day before, and if there's any escalations I should be aware of. So we're always monitoring what we can do doing better through the eyes of your lenses. So please feel free to give feedback. So
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and Randall's got a comment here. Have a perfectly working Q20 that's now a backup to a newer NV20LT. Recently, support suggested to me that parts for the transmitter's NE50 exciters were hard to come by, and these exciters are difficult to repair. Does the same repair situation exist for the Q20 as a whole? And so I can address a good chunk of that, but I mean, the NE50 these days, the cost of repairing it, if we did substitute the parts, is going to exceed the cost of a VS300 transmitter to
That's right.
replace it. in that case, you're almost better off replacing the NE50 with the VS300. Q20 as a whole, I don't think there's anything you can't fix in that thing at this point.
No, that's right. So to your first point, we support to our best of our ability to support anything that we've built over the last 50 plus years. So and what you will find, there's that whole cost benefit piece. So as Jeff just mentioned with the Q20, for example, is it more economical sense to purchase a new transmitter? We'll be more than happy to support you and try to repair it or supply you a replacement part, but sometimes that may not be as cost effective. Again, and the easiest way to find that out is reach out to us and talk to a technician. We'll get a quote out to you, and that way you can make the decision yourself, or bring it to your customer or your manager, and you can decide from there. And then of course Jeff is there as well, who can help you with finding a solution as well.
Yeah. And that's the key thing. I mean, I had this conversation with a engineer from Chicago who's not with us anymore, but he made the point that he had an old AmFET 2.5, and he says, I went to get a quote for a modulator, and for the price of the modulator, I could replace the transmitter. And so, yeah, we still support stuff we built 40, 50 years ago, and we will absolutely, if you want to throw enough money at us, we'll build you a modulator.
That's right.
But you're talking stuff that was all hand built and hand assembled, and these days, you know, we can still do it, but there is absolutely going to be a premium on it. So
that's right.
Yeah, at some point you almost have to make that decision. William uses an example: the big caps in the AC to DC power supply for the Q22, Q40 are getting hard to come by, and again, that is another situation. And this comes back, Scott's team is primarily tasked with that, but they do a good chunk of their sustain efforts are sourcing replacement parts.
That's right.
So normally we run 10 to 15 minutes overtime, but I'm going to respect your time a little more than I do my own. And I think we're going to wrap up pretty close to the top of the hour today, within a minute or two. We have, of course, this webinar, as with all webinars, is recorded for posterity. I hope I didn't speak out of turn at any point, because goodness knows somebody will bring it up to haunt me, probably on Facebook at some point in the future. Definitely, we have the Waves newsletter, YouTube channel. John, that's something that your team has been really good about, is doing the little how-to videos.
Yeah, so they really enjoy it. For most of my team is introverted, but for some reason they don't mind getting in front of a camera. So it's great. And we built a little studio as well. So so we did a refreshing, I guess is probably the term, about a year or two ago, with Adam helping out. And so we like to put the stuff up on YouTube. So check it out.
Yep, absolutely, and certainly hit the Nautel YouTube channel. You'll see all the TTT sessions in there. I'd say today is episode 51. Online info, I've mentioned Barry Michigan's Broadcaster's Desktop resource before. I know Matt Hurden was on with him last Thursday talking about the new AUI. Yay! By the way, sometime in November, I think 9th, I believe, I've got Matt on, and we'll talk about that. And I think, not to speak out of turn, but I think by the time we have that session, it may be shipping in beta to at least a limited selection of reprobates to see if they can break it. You know, if we're talking about seeing if we can break something, we're sending it to Alex. But that's and John knows exactly what I mean there. Anyway, so definitely Broadcaster's Desktop resources. I will typically be hanging around the I Take Pictures of Transmitter sites, Broadcasting Club, Broadcast Engineering, AM, FM radio forums on Facebook, radiolists.net, pubtech.org, crtech.org, broadcastengineering.info. I've probably missed about 5, but yeah, we hang around and monitor a lot of sources. So definitely, you know, feel free to reach out whatever way is convenient. I've done transmitter troubleshooting on LinkedIn before. All right, on that note, I want to thank you, John, for being with us today. It's we don't usually get a chance to talk unless I'm growling about something, so this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I like nice, Jeff. Thank you for having me. I
On
didn't
that note,
recognize you smiling. Yeah.
well, we don't try
Uh,
not to tone the
yeah.
frivolity down. Now you
No,
see me
joking
smiling.
aside, you're great. Two things, many things I appreciate about you, but one is you were in customer service, so you know what the expectation is, so you will push on behalf of your customer. And that's the other thing. You were definitely a very good or excellent customer advocate, and I appreciate that. So it's my feelings are never hurt when you come to me.
We try not to get too personal about it. On that note, folks, so John, thank you very much for being here, and all you folks that hung with us through the bitter end, thank you very much for being here, and we hope to see you again real soon. Let's see, today is the 20-something, 26th. Next week, I think we've got a week off, and then we are back, I believe, November 9th. So by all means, get registered. I think the press for the November sessions is out now. Sign up as fast as you can. We hope to see you next month. Bye for now.